mission to Nepal. Nepal. Yeah. Well, thank you for including me in this wonderful Mission Sunday and for inviting me back to share with you a little bit more about how our church is connected all around the world. It's wonderful to be part of a connectional church,
yes.
And a church that is connected in so many different ways, including in the sending and receiving of missionaries. At General Conference last week, we commissioned 29 new missionaries.
Wow.
That means we have 400 missionaries serving from everywhere to everywhere. And pretty fun that is part of who we are as the United Methodist Church. It's my privilege to be able to serve as one of those. I have, as you know, served previously in Japan, in Iowa, in Cambodia, and now in Nepal, with an ecumenical partner called the United Mission to Nepal. And we were founding members of the United Mission to Nepal 63 years ago. So today I'd like to share with you a little bit of the history of how we got connected with the people of Nepal, as well as some about our earthquake relief efforts. As you may remember, there was a pretty devastating earthquake in Nepal. We've got another group going on over there, which is great. Okay. As you may remember from when I was here 3 years ago, I'm a water microbiologist by training. So in Nepal, I work in community health, some still in water sanitation and hygiene, as well as in maternal and child health and in adolescent sexual reproductive health and rights. So, you know, if we have time towards the end, I can share more with you about that, or we can save those things for 3 years from now. Because I hope you'll invite me back again as we are connected, as we continue this connection together. So the vision of the United Mission to Nepal is for fullness of life for all in a transformed Nepali society, which I think is very much in line with the mission of our United Methodist Church, to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. So very exciting to see how that works.
You want to point it up?
Oh, do I have the thing up there? That's where I pointed. I'm learning. Thank you. So Nepal, what you may know about Nepal is that it's there in the Himalayan mountains. So here are some of our beautiful Himalayan mountains. In my other version I have another picture of Nepal, a map of Nepal, which is not in this version here. So Nepal is a pretty small country. It's about the size of Iowa. So smaller than Northern California, except Iowa's kind of square-shaped and Nepal is pickle-shaped. And Nepal runs from the northwest down to the southeast, but Nepalis just sort of straighten it out and think about it as being an east to west country. And the north to south section is the three main elevation zones of Nepal. So in the southern part, there on the India border, is what's called the Terai, the lowlands, which actually is pretty much like sea level up to maybe 3,000 feet elevations. Then the next zone is called the Pahad, the middle hills. It's 3,000 up to maybe 6,000 to 7,000 feet in elevation. Kathmandu, the capital city, is in the Pahad. It's 4,500 feet. I work in western Nepal in a place called Rukam. It's about 5,500 feet over there. So about the elevation of Denver, but unlike Denver, we are at the latitude of Florida. And so,
hot.
Yeah. And because it's a monsoon climate, so that we have a hot, rainy summer, and then a cold, dry winter. We only had 2 days of snow last year. Now, it was plenty cold. It did get down to freezing for most of January. And we live in these stone buildings or brick buildings like you have here. So you know that when it gets cold, these stone buildings, they're pretty cold to live in. But not unbearable. Above 7,000 feet, you start to get into the Himal zone. Himal means snowy mountain in Nepali, so Himalayas comes from that. People will live up to maybe 12,000 feet. Nobody lives at 29,000 feet at the top of Everest. But those are your 3 geographical zones. It's a very isolated country. It's landlocked. It's trapped there between India to the south and the east and west, and China on the northern border, or Tibet on the northern border. And so it has also been a very politically isolated country for much of its history. I don't remember all my dates. I think Nepal was unified around 400 years ago under the monarchy that ruled it. 12 kingdoms came together. Then there was a period of about 100 years known as the Rana regime, which was an oligarchy. And that time period is often called a feudalistic time in Nepal's history, so landlords and serfs. In the late 1940s, the monarchy came back into power. And that's when you start to see Nepal opening up and interacting a little bit more with the outside world. That's when you see the first expeditions from the Nepal side to climb Mount Everest. The United Methodist Church, in just 3 years, will be celebrating 200 years of sending out missionaries. So we've been sending folks for a long time, and at that time, in the late 1940s, early 50s, we had a missionary couple serving in North India named Bob and Bethel Fleming. And Bob was an ornithologist. And so he got permission from the king of Nepal to come in on a bird collecting expedition. And because Bethel was a medical doctor, brought some medicines along with them and treated people along the way. And at the end of that tour, stopped in Kathmandu to thank the king for permission to come into the country. He said, "We see there's a great need for medical care. Would you allow us as Christians to come back and start a hospital?" And the king said yes, on 2 conditions, which I'll paraphrase. He said, "I don't want you Christians coming in all wiggly-piggly with your different denominations and all of your confusing organizations. You have to come in under one umbrella. We do believe in Christian unity, but sometimes we need a little bit of external pressure to make it happen." So the then Methodist, now United Methodist Church, got together with 6 other global mission church denominations to form the United Mission to Nepal. We now have more than 25 churches from around the world, including the Cedar Fund from Hong Kong, Transform Aid International, which is the Baptist in Australia, Church of Scotland, and of course our United Methodist Church, working together with this vision of fullness of life for all in a transformed Nepali society. The other condition that the king put on the forming United Mission was that there would be no evangelism. Until 10 years ago, when the Civil War ended and democracy came to Nepal, conversion was illegal. So Nepal today is about 80% Hindu, about 15% Buddhist, about 2% Christian, 2% Muslim, 2% something else. This is Bauda Temple, a Buddhist temple in Kathmandu Valley. 10 years ago, after the Civil War, baptism was then allowed. But up to that point, if you received baptism, you could be imprisoned for a year. Pastors who performed baptism could be imprisoned 6 to 7 years. But the Spirit was still moving in Nepal, despite those political restrictions. The United Mission to Nepal felt it was important for us to be an open Christian presence, serving the people of Nepal in the name and spirit of Christ. But some of the other things that were going on was that there were Nepalis who had been living as expatriates in India. They were working in the tea plantations of Darjeeling or as Gorkhas in the British Army. And in that space outside of Nepal, they had encountered Christ. Their lives were changed. And they desired to come back to their home country to share the good news of knowing God in Christ. And so, as the United Mission was coming in to start hospitals and build hydroelectric dams and train nurses and engineers and do literacy programs and nutrition work, it was an intentional parallel action to Nepali Christians coming back to their home country, forming faith communities and inviting others into worship together. So the church in Nepal is kind of different from the church here or in Korea or in Sierra Leone or in other places around the world, as it should be. First of all, we worship on Saturdays. I don't think the Seventh-day Adventists had any particular influence. It's just that Sunday's a work day, Saturday's a holiday, so we worship on Saturdays. On Easter, I've never been invited to a sunrise service. Instead, we have a parade through Kathmandu. Parades are very important in Nepali culture. There seems to be a parade every week for some religious festival or another. So Easter is when the Christians have a parade. For Christmas, last year I was out in Rukam in western Nepal. The village is divided between two ridge lines up on the hill. And so we met in the middle there, in the flat area where the ridges meet, and we had a picnic. It started somewhere around 9 in the morning. I didn't show up till noon, but that was okay because it was an ongoing celebration with singing and dancing and children's programs, and it culminated in this wonderful meal together where we fed the entire community. I've been to a lot of church potlucks, right? But what impressed me most was the size of the pots used to cook rice. I mean, they were like a meter across. So huge pots of rice, kidney beans cooked in as a kind of curry chicken.
Kidney beans?
Kidney beans, yeah. We eat a lot of different kinds of beans in Nepal. So lentils are very popular, but as are chickpeas. And for this meal, we had a kind of kidney bean, they call it rasmati. It's a curried kidney bean. So one of my favorite of the bean stews that we eat. But just a great celebration that we were able to have together. So really wonderful to be part of this. So for 63 years, the United Mission to Nepal has been working in Nepal alongside our Nepali brothers and sisters in Christ. In United Mission to Nepal, only about a quarter or a third of our staff are Christian. The rest are Hindu or Buddhist or secular, but we do take time every Wednesday. We have team meetings. This is our meeting in Rukam district. And we take time to reflect on, learn about what our partners and friends are doing all around the country, and to pray together. So this history of working in Nepal was very important when the earthquake happened last April. So last April 25th, we had a pretty big earthquake, a 7.8 magnitude earthquake. I was here in '89, so, we had a big earthquake too. So I thought I knew big earthquake. And we all know the drill, right? You get down and you make sure it's safe and you proceed slowly outside and you look around at your neighbors and make sure they're okay and start thinking about how you could reach out beyond that. Well, I didn't actually know earthquakes. Because an hour later we had a 6.1. A week later, we had a 7.4. We had an average of 10 aftershocks a day of 4 or higher for the first month. It was a very turbulent time. Almost 9,000 people lost their lives. I can only say that I'm very grateful that those two biggest earthquakes both happened at noon, when most people were outside. We'll see a video here in a second. And when you see the destruction of houses, it could have been much worse than it was. And we can be grateful for that. The amazing thing to me about church is the way that we are connected in our communities. When we get together every week, we know each other. We know who to call on when there's a new baby and we need to deliver a casserole. We know who is homebound and needs a special visit. And we have those same deep roots in Nepal. And so when we were looking at the devastation and looking at the needs, pretty overwhelming needs in the country, we said we'd like to focus on working in Dading district, which is an area that we've been working in for the last 20 years. And it was highly effective. So you can see here's the epicenter is in Gorkha here. Here's Kathmandu. So here's our pickle-shaped Nepal. And this is Dading district here in white. This is an increase of the Dading. After the earthquake, we started sitting down with the United Nations coordinating efforts, with the government of Nepal, and talking about who are the relief agencies that are coming in and where are they working. And a lot of these agencies are coming in. We're able to help in Kathmandu, which was highly impacted. And we said, we'd like to help in some of the remote villages. Because as you know, in any disaster, it's folks who are already living on the margins who are most impacted. My house in Kathmandu actually wasn't impacted by the earthquake. It's got great pillars, they have rebar in them, that metal gives it some flexibility. It's houses that were built with just stone and mud that really collapse. And we have, really, as is often the case in many countries throughout Asia, both in Cambodia and Nepal where I've worked, it's folks who are ethnic minority groups who are often the first to engage in the Christian community. And that's very much true in Nepal. And so some of the ethnic minority groups that live way up here in Dading, that's way up here in this mountain zone areas, we were able to work with them in delivering relief supplies. So the prayers that the international community lifted up at that time were so sustaining. The financial support that came in enabled us to go down to the lowlands and buy rice and beans and sugar and salt and cooking oil and hygiene kits and cooking supplies and tarps and blankets, and put together a relief package that followed the SPHERE standards, the International Humanitarian Response Standards, that aimed to bring some dignity to the relief effort. We were able to put together that package. It was 3 weeks worth of food and shelter and hygiene. Bring those things up to the district headquarters here in Dading, and then distribute that into some of these remote areas. And normally it's about a 2-day walk to get up to these areas. A lot of trails were out, a lot of bridges were down, so we did have to helicopter a lot of supplies in. And I'll show you a video in just a second of the road to get from here up to here, just to the bottom of that northern area. But what I was talking with you about before about church, about knowing our community, that was so important in bringing relief to these remote areas, because it was the local community that came out to organize the distribution efforts. And And so you'll see a bunch of people with blue bibs on. Those are all of the United Mission to Nepal folks who are helping out. But the people with the yellow sashes, those are the community volunteers, the local volunteers who are part of that relief effort as well.
Dhading was the fourth most affected district by the April 25 earthquake. UMN has worked in Dhading for the last 20 years. The scale of devastation in the districts up north like Ri, Lapa and Jharlang is beyond comprehension. The houses have been flattened, lives lost, crops destroyed and livestock killed. It was the poorest people who could least afford it who had been hit the hardest by the quake. At the district center, UMN staff and the volunteers work full swing to pack bags of relief aid. Beaten rice, lentils, sugar, noodles, salt, spices, tea, oil and rice. 5 trucks and 2 tractors are loaded. The plan is to take these bags up to Chimchok, where it is going to be distributed. The road beyond that is bad. The trails are broken. This is not good. The bags have to reach Chimchok. Now what they fear is rain and landslides. Finally, after 12 hours of rough ride, the bags reach the destination at 10 p.m. Once again, it's time to get busy. It's quite a task to manage the distribution. These villagers have walked for 3 hours from the neighboring area, Ri. Silas Tamang, the leader of hymns, has some important announcements to make.
हामी सबैजना दुखी पनि छौं आजको दिन हामीसँग तुरुन्तै के राहत पाएको कारणले हामी खुसी पनि छौं विशेष गरी हामी सबैजना मिलेर युएमएन धादिङको साथीहरु यहाँ आउनु भएको छ उहाँहरु सबैलाई धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद एक घरको एक जना मात्र इमानदारीले आउनु होला
433 households were able to receive the emergency food bags today. What they have in these baskets is all they have, and they've got to hold on to them tight. Happily, villagers set off on the long walk home to bring food to their waiting families.
It's pretty amazing to me what our global connection is able to do, even in the midst of this tragic situation. What you saw in the video there was distribution to about 433 families. Altogether, we were able to distribute this relief package to more than 12,000 families, more than 60,000 individuals. Which is sort of what all of this is sort of about here. We actually did it for just over $1 million. We had originally budgeted $2 million to be able to meet this goal. But because of these kinds of partnerships, because of being connected to the community, because of the local volunteers, we were able to reach out to some of the most remote parts of the highly impacted parts of the country with this relief effort. And we have continued with the recovery efforts this last year. It's slow. but we're working on it. UMCOR has partnered with us, United Methodist Committee on Relief, have given us support for rebuilding schools. So we have a commitment to rebuild 35 schools. UMCOR has given us funds for 11 of those. And we're trying to do that in a step-by-step process, both to get kids back into school quickly, but also with this vision of having earthquake-resistant schools. So one of the things we did was to work, I'm not an engineer, but apparently this was a challenging thing to figure out how to get these frames up there that could be then bolted together, because we couldn't bring welding equipment up there. But worked to get these frames up within a couple months after the earthquake so the kids could get back into school and have some normalcy to their life. I'm missing the next picture in this slide, but eventually these walls the community will work to fill in the walls with brick and stone, but because it has that metal frame to it, it will be an earthquake-resistant or resilient building. And then we will continue the work we're doing around child-friendly education in terms of helping to renew those schools with additional teaching aids and supplies. The United Methodist Women have also been very supportive. They were able to send us a grant of $100,000 because there is an endowed fund for health in Nepal. And so we were able to use that in a couple different ways. The first way we used it, I shared with you that we're an ecumenical partnership. So we're getting support from all around the world for different parts of the relief effort. And because we are a long-standing, well-respected organization as well, UNICEF charged us to be the lead agency in the nutrition response for Dading District. So we coordinated to set up 11 therapeutic feeding centers throughout the district. We operated 2 of those. With the support from the United Methodist Women, we were able to train volunteers in a rapid screening method called MUAC, mid-upper arm circumference, and then support them to go around to the villages identifying children who were malnourished. Because anybody who was malnourished before the earthquake is at particular risk in the post-earthquake situation. Brought those children in initially for 3 months, and then it was extended to 6 months of therapeutic feeding supplements. The other way support from the United Methodist Women has been used is as part of our mental health response. A lot of that work initially was actually with school teachers, training them in trauma healing. I just got our 1-year report, and altogether we have trained 475 community volunteers in a trauma healing process. This is a group counseling methodology that we developed. Well, starting about 10 years ago after the Civil War, we developed this process, and we've used it in other kind of small-scale disasters, some flooding situations, and so it's a model that we know works in Nepal. And so training people in that to have some of that mental health components as well. We are also involved in other ways in helping individuals rebuild homes, working on trails, working on other livelihood reinvigoration, things along those lines. So that's a little bit. I think we've been talking about half an hour now, so I wanted to sort of pause and see if you had any questions or yeah.
It's fascinating. Have you had VIN teams come in?
We have not had VIN teams come in. United Mission to Nepal is not set up to receive VIM teams. So the church that I'm part of in Kathmandu, it had some of its sister churches down in India brought up VIM team equivalents in order to help with some of the initial relief distribution work that the church was part of. United Mission is not going to organize to receive VIM teams, but I have been talking with some churches who are interested to work through our local churches in Nepal, to work in partnership with those churches in reaching out. But the capacity to host teams is also something that they are still developing. So that takes it will take a little bit more coordination than we've done so far. But yeah, and Nepal's also kind of far for a lot of people to come.
So is Africa.
Yes, yes. It takes a big commitment. It takes a big commitment to come out. Yeah. I don't know how we're doing on time.
Well, like 20 more minutes.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Oh, that's great. Yeah. No, I always want to sort of touch base and see.
I suppose I will maybe need to sneak out early for another meeting, but just to let you know if you see me leave as well.
Yeah. While we are continuing, we have a 3-year plan in disaster recovery work in Dotting. At the same time, we are continuing our community development work throughout the country. Most of the areas we work in actually were not impacted by the earthquake. We work a lot in far western Nepal, which is out where I work in Rukum. And so while we will do specific earthquake recovery work for 3 years, we will not leave Dotting after that. We'll just shift into a community development modality. And so this is looking a little bit at what is our understanding of community transformation. What is fullness of life? How does community transformation happen? One of the areas where we start is we understand that poverty is not just a material lack, but is actually an interrelated web of factors, including despair and oppression and environmental degradation and conflict. And as we sit together in small community groups and vision what we want for our community, we also understand that fullness of life, that John 10:10 promise, is also an integrated web of factors, including dignity and respect, and justice and equality, and peace and reconciliation. So that's part of the foundation where we start. Within United Mission to Nepal, we spend time with our staff to explore the biblical basis of that work, how we work in the community, why we're working in the community in these ways. So then this sort of looks at what we call our theory of change. How does change take place, and what is our role as a non-governmental organization, as a community-based organization? In the early years of United Mission to Nepal, we started a lot of institutions. We started 7 hospitals. We built 2 hydroelectric dams. We started numerous schools and training programs. As the years have gone on, we have localized those projects. We have turned those hospitals over to become community hospitals. So Patton Hospital is now the premier government hospital for southern Kathmandu Valley. That's a hospital that we started, which is part of what we do in this country as well. If you look at the hospitals and universities that our church has started all over the country, that has happened in Nepal. On our 60th anniversary, we celebrated 100 projects that have been started and have become community institutions or community projects. And today, what we're really focused on is building the capacity of local Nepali organizations. So we have 65 partner organizations all around the country, and we work to build their capacity. Sometimes that's financial literacy, organizational development, how to have an executive committee, and those sorts of things. But a lot of it is also technical capacity building. So we work in 6 areas for technical capacity. And that includes sustainable livelihoods, peace building, health, integral mission, education, and good governance. So the input that we make into the community transformation is in capacity capacity building, both at the organizations as well as at the community level. Learning and sharing, and that opportunities to learn and share together are key in that. We also think it's important to be an influencing agent, which is Nepali government-approved language for advocacy. And we have been advocates on many levels, including when we look at nutrition. We helped to develop something in Nepal called Sorbitum Pito. Actually, United Mission to Nepal Nutritionists developed Sorbitum Pito, which means super flour. It's a local porridge that's made that women can make in their own homes. It's effective as a therapeutic food for children who have had dysentery. It's also used as a complementary food alongside continuous breastfeeding starting at 6 months. So we pioneered that, we did the research behind that. Government of Nepal now promotes that nationwide. So those are some of the ways, at least in the health area, that we have been advocating. Okay. But we don't just do training and networking and linking. We also do resource the local community with financial resources to implement projects as well. We work particularly with women, children, Dalits, which are the lowest caste within the Hindu caste system, and people with disabilities. So that's just an overview of our vision of how we work in the community.
Well, a question. I guess I don't know the history. What was the Civil War
Oh, around the monarchy. So there was a 10-year civil war. It was the main revolutionary group is the Maoist communists within Nepal. And 10 years ago, the monarchy was ousted. And so that's when democracy came to Nepal. And so just last July, after like 6 years of committee meetings, they finally ratified a new constitution. So it's what they call a federalist democracy. And there are still some disagreements as exactly how power is distributed or representation is determined within the country. But that's my best understanding of the political system now. So there is still a former king, but the monarchy has been stripped of its title in Nepal at this point. So that's what the Civil War was about. So I work with the health team. We work primarily, as I was sharing earlier, in maternal and child health. We work through female community health volunteers, which you can always tell when they're out about in the community because they have these lovely blue fabric with the little swirls on them. So these are local community women. The woman that is in the video that I have about this, her name is Rita. She has about a 3rd grade level education. So we're not talking well-educated, but community members who are passionate about helping their community. I don't have my maternal and child health video on this flash drive, but I'll just give you a little overview of that program. Child mortality has really decreased over the last 20 years in Nepal. Sorbitum Pito has been a contributing factor to that, as has been vaccination campaigns and a lot of different areas of work. Where we have not seen improvements is in neonatal health. So neonatal mortality is death of children under 5 days. So a lot of our work right now is addressing those factors that influence neonatal health. Some of that has to do with institutional delivery. 50% of women still give birth at home. And so our female community health volunteers are really key people in the community for visiting with pregnant women, helping them come into the health post for prenatal checkups. The goal is to have 4. And we're still struggling to get women in for just 1, but we're making improvements. And then to come into the health post for delivery where there are skilled birth attendants available. So the female community health volunteers are great at this kind of nutritional education, birth preparedness education, and then that accompaniment work to really help women access the skilled services. But we don't just approach this from one angle. We try to approach it from a variety of different angles. So under our education program, we're organizing child clubs. These are times for children to get together and study and be in relationship, but also children are great at being change agents. They're great activists in their community. And they get involved in all sorts of things around sanitation campaigns, but in Dotting, where this picture was taken, one of the things that children have been doing is putting blue flags on the houses of pregnant women. Because, of course, children know what's going on, right? And oftentimes in Nepal, women will not disclose their pregnancy. They'll hide that. And so by the children going around and putting the flags on, then the female community health volunteers know where they need to visit. So trying to make that linkage. Adolescent pregnancy is another risk factor associated with neonatal health. We've seen a decrease in child marriage in the last 20 years, but it's still an issue. And of course, child marriage leads to adolescent pregnancy, which has all sorts of complications. Huge decrease in marriage among 12 to 15-year-olds, but actually an increase among marriage in 16 to 18-year-olds. Part of that's a shifting, but also part of that is changing community values. Traditionally, people would have an arranged marriage, but increasingly there's this phenomenon of love marriages or elopement. And one of the things that we saw when we first started organizing child clubs was an increase in love marriages among child club participants, which of course did not make parents happy. And so we've engaged the child club members as activists around reducing arranged child marriages, but also as they set their own rules and regulations, because that's part of what the child clubs do, they have been able to put positive peer pressure on each other. So in Mugu, one of the areas that we work in, the child clubs set a rule that if you get married, you're out. And so in the last 2 years, we've had no marriages among child club participants. And so these are some of the different ways. We also work around family planning. For the last 3 years, we've had a new program called Men as Partners, bringing husbands and wives together around family planning. And we're also working in adolescent sexual reproductive health, which is an area that I've been involved in, and in menstrual hygiene management, but bringing adolescents together to talk about gender issues, talk about, while you're an adolescent, what do you want your marriage to look like? What kind of relationship do you want to have? And having those kinds of discussions, learning about modern contraceptive options, and bringing all of that education in at that age. Yeah.
I was just curious, that's good. Divorce, is that up or down?
Divorce.
No, I mean, I'm curious, but you said they're not remarrying later, 16, 18, and I'm wondering, does that translate into a better divorce rate? And marrying out of love instead of, maybe it's better to marry out of commitment instead of love. I don't know, I'm just curious.
It's a good question. When I saw and interviewed adolescents, I asked them, well, do you want to have a love marriage or an arranged marriage? And most of them want to have a love marriage. And then I've asked them also, well, what kind of marriage is more successful? And they say, oh, arranged marriages are more successful.
Okay.
So there is, even among the adolescents, there is some perception like that. So it's a challenging time in Nepal right now because of all of these changing cultural values, different influences coming from different directions. And it's important, I think, for the adolescents particularly, to have a chance to sit and talk about these sorts of things and to think about exactly those questions, because they make observations, they know what's going on, but we don't often pause to think about it. And that's one of the things that we as church can provide is a space for conversation to take place.
In your conversation with the young people, do you talk with them about their desire to leave their own home to go off somewhere to find work?
That is a very good question, because that's a really big issue in Nepal. So the Philippines is the #1 country in the world where remittance is a significant part of the national GDP. Nepal is #2 in the world in terms of remittance as a percentage of GDP, because Nepal doesn't have a lot of industry. Its #1 export is human labor. And young men, the boys maybe even from age 12 or 13, will start migrating seasonally to India. There's lots of risk factors when you have large portions of your population migrating for labor. You are at increased risk for all of the human rights and other exploitation violations that go along with that. A lot of that migration is to the Middle East. And if you've read any of the violations of human rights around the construction of the World Cup soccer stadium and things like that, that has very much influenced Nepalis. And so yes, we have a number of programs around safe migration, around local income generation to address those kinds of questions. I don't know if that's part of our adolescent sexual and reproductive health program, but I think, and we do talk about HIV, and HIV in Nepal is highest among migrant workers and their spouses. Those are the people who are most at risk in Nepal. So I think under our HIV component we should be talking about this, but I will follow up specifically on that when I get back, because it's a really good point. And it's an area that we're working in, like maternal and child health, from a variety of different ways of addressing that. Yeah. So.
Along with that, human trafficking is an issue.
Say
Trafficking.
We have run some programs through our peace building team that are specifically addressing human trafficking, specifically around educating people about, like I was saying, safe migration, and then what are risk factors to be aware of. And then we do a lot of work in a lot of different ways to enable people to have just a little bit more income locally. And it's surprising to me, because I do a lot of like program evaluation. It's a lot of what my work is. And so when I go out and interview people, it's shocking to me what a small increase in income stops people from seasonally migrating down to India for labor. But it doesn't take that much. A couple goats. And, you know, a little chicken and egg business. And all of a sudden, I'm making enough money, I don't need to send someone to my family down there.
Heifer involved?
Heifer is working in Nepal. I have not worked with them directly. One of the things that we've done is, when we choose where to work, is to assess not only what are the poorest areas of Nepal, but also who is working where, so that we don't overlap. Because we're only working in 10 of Nepal's 75 districts. So we try to make sure that different folks are working in different areas. But yes, heifer is active in Nepal as well. So,
Where did you get that outfit?
where did I get?
Your clothes.
Oh, yes. Well, this is sort of what we wear in Nepal. In Nepal, we call this Pakistani style because it's a little bit longer. Normally in Nepal, we'll wear kurta surwal. Kurta is the top, just above the knee. This is more like party clothes in Nepal rather than what I would wear every day to the office. But it's typical Nepali style, or typical South Asian.
Party?
Yeah, these are party clothes, because, you know, they're kind of shiny, festive.
So no more clothes.
No, I mean the style. I would wear the same style to work,
Color.
and actually same colors. But this is chiffon, and I would just wear cotton to work.
So that's good for parade, right?
This is good for parades, yes. And because red is the color of happiness in Nepal, I think in China also, yeah, in a lot of areas, red is a happy color. So, but this season, pink is more popular. So, in places where I normally see lots of red kurtas, I've seen lots of pink kurtas this year. So, you have to be stylish too.
Another question about the caste system.
Yeah.
As you treat these women and young women, does that system apply to? Well, yes, maybe that's one of the questions. Does that system apply to how they want you to treat them? Like one takes the priority of the other because of the system. And do they mind that you're treating someone who is of a lower caste? I mean, how does that work?
That's a very good question about, how does it work when we're, well, theoretically, 10 years ago, with all the changes that happened, the caste system was outlawed. But we know in this country that when you outlaw racism, that doesn't mean that people's minds have changed. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done around shifting those mentalities. And so, of course, when you talk with folks in the low caste, they're very happy that the legal structure has changed and that they legally have access to community resources that they didn't have before. But what you're talking about is more of a backlash from those who are high caste. And I haven't specifically run into that overtly, but I have heard some of my coworkers who are high caste say things like, well, those low caste people, they're not very easy to work with. They don't want to change. So I hear comments like that, which to me is a little bit of that. I want to work with people like me because they're easier to work with. It's not directly said.
But as a distinction, you said there's a certain percentage of your workers that are non-Christians. Now, are the Christians, high caste Christians, saying the same thing that you're just saying now, or these are non-Christian workers that are saying this about caste members? I'm just curious. Because supposedly if you're a Christian, you should be thinking that way. So I'm just wondering.
Yeah, mostly I've heard these comments from my non-Christian colleagues.
Okay, so there's hope.
So there is hope. At the same time, like when I've talked with pastors, because within the Christian community, people want to marry other Christians, and so there still are arranged marriages within the Christian community. And while we are seeing intercaste marriage within the Christian community, my pastor friends tell me it's still difficult. And this is what you see, is that people are happy to work together, but they still don't want to marry somebody of a different caste. When we really start to see intercaste marriage happening on a more than token level, that's when I think we'll really start to see changes.
How can a marriage be a token?
Oh, yeah. Meaning only a token number of people are having intercaste marriages.
The marriages aren't token.
The marriages aren't token. What I'm saying is only maybe 1% of marriages.
They had a movie Bombay showing Allahabad with a Hindu and a Muslim kissing, and the Muslims were throwing rocks at the screen.
Sure. Yeah.
How many castes are there?
So there are, the caste system sort of has 4 major castes. You have Brahmin, who are the priests. You have Kshetri, who are the warriors. You have Sudra, I think, is the merchant caste.
Vaishnav.
Professional, yeah. And then you have Dalit, which is the untouchable low caste. So the top two are what they call above the water line, and the other two are below the water line. But then within that, you have lots of subcastes, which I can't even tell the four different, it's too much for me. And it's also interesting because Nepal is a very diverse place, but 80% of Nepal historically, and we're talking eons ago, migrated north from India, or what's now India. About 20% migrated south from sort of China. So you have what in Nepal they often term Aryan Nepalese and Mongolian Nepalese. And it's a real diverse culture in terms of having folks from different areas. And so it's also interesting to see with some of the Mongolian ethnic groups have a place within the caste system, and some don't. Some are totally separate from the caste system as well. So these are all things that are just too confusing for me to understand, but it's a very complex, but very hierarchical situation. And the Christians are working, I think, really hard to overcome all of these distinctions and barriers. And so, like, I just was at the wedding of one of my Christian co-workers, who is of Aryan descent, and her husband is of Mongolian descent. And so that's also a very unique marriage within Nepal. But very exciting to see folks within the Christian community really pioneering some of that in Nepal as well. So
You can just tell by the last name?
yes, yeah, you can. I can't, but
historical.
yeah. And often, because there's a whole lot of ethnic minority groups within Nepal, so oftentimes, so Sherpa is one ethnic minority group. Rai, Gurung, Tamang, these are all ethnic minority groups. So oftentimes, your ethnic group will be your last name.
Mm-hmm.
Other times, your caste will be your last name. But yes, your name puts you in a box.
That's why you're born.
Yeah.
This has been so interesting. I know we could go on for hours, but some of us have something.
Yes.
So I want to thank Katherine and your mom too for making this time to come and share with us, and invite you to continue discussions. I don't know, email or whatever.
Yeah, and I do have. I have not sent out an email in like 6 or 8 months, but I do have an email list if you want to.
Yeah, I think I want it.
Yeah, I know there are several folks who are. Sorry, just 1 second, let me get it.
But they're getting back into tourism also.
Slowly.
Go and visit. It's a beautiful place. And your tourist dollars will help the economy.
Yes.
Think of it that way.
So yes, if
If
anyone wants to sign up,
put your email and your name there. Beyond
I know a number of people here are. So yeah, well, thank you all so much.